Jake Martinez wiped the grease from his hands and stared at the cargo hauler's engine. The thing was old. Maybe older than him. And it showed. He had been working on this rust bucket for 6 hours straight, and his back was starting to hurt. The station's night shift was quiet, which he liked. No supervisors breathing down his neck. No other mechanics asking to borrow his tools. Just him, the hum of the orbital station, and broken machines that needed fixing. He was 32 years old and had been working on Helios 7 for almost 5 years. The station sat on the edge of the Draconis sector, a repair facility where ships stopped for maintenance before heading deeper into space. It was not glamorous work, but it paid well enough, and Jake was good at it. He had always been good with machines, understanding how they worked, how to fix them when they broke. The alarm shattered the quiet. Red lights flashed throughout the hangar bay, and a loud siren wailed through the speakers. Jake dropped his wrench and looked up. The emergency alert system only went off for serious problems: fire, hull breach, or station failure. His heart started beating faster. "All personnel evacuate Hangar Bay 12 immediately," a voice announced over the speakers. "Chemical fire detected. All personnel evacuate now." Hangar Bay 12 was 3 sections over from where Jake stood. He grabbed his jacket and started moving toward the exit like he was supposed to. Other workers ran past him, their faces tight with fear. Chemical fires were dangerous. They burned hot and fast, and the smoke could kill you before the flames ever touched you. Jake was halfway to the emergency exit when he heard it. A cry. High-pitched and terrified, cutting through the noise of the alarms. He stopped walking. Everyone else kept running, pushing past him toward safety. But Jake stood still, listening. There it was again, a sound like nothing he had ever heard before. Something between a bird's screech and a child's scream. It was coming from Hangar Bay 12, from inside the fire. "Move it, Martinez," someone shouted at him as they ran past. Jake's brain told him to keep walking, to get to safety like everyone else. But his feet were already turning around, already carrying him back toward the burning hangar. He grabbed an emergency respirator from the wall and a fire-resistant coat from a storage locker. His hands shook as he pulled the coat on. The door to Hangar Bay 12 was hot to the touch. Jake hit the emergency override, and the door slid open. Heat blasted him in the face, and he stumbled backward. The entire hangar was filled with orange flames and thick black smoke. He could barely see 10 feet in front of him. The cry came again, louder now. Desperate. Jake pulled the respirator over his face and stepped into the inferno. The heat was incredible, even through the fire-resistant coat. Sweat poured down his face immediately. The smoke was so thick he could barely see. He moved forward carefully, one hand on the wall to guide him. The crying sound was coming from deeper in the hangar, near where the diplomatic vessels usually docked. His eyes were watering, and his lungs burned despite the respirator. Every instinct screamed at him to turn back, to get out while he still could. But that cry, that terrified sound, pushed him forward. Then he saw it. Through the smoke and flames, Jake spotted a shape on the floor. It was small, maybe the size of a large dog, and it was trapped under a piece of fallen metal beam. As he got closer, he realized what he was looking at. Scales. Wings. A long neck and tail. A dragon, not a full-grown dragon like the ones he had seen on news feeds and diplomatic broadcasts. This was a baby, a hatchling. Its scales were deep red, and they reflected the firelight around it. The creature's eyes were wide with fear, and it cried out when it saw Jake approaching. "Easy, easy," Jake said, though he knew the creature probably could not understand him. "I'm here to help." The metal beam pinning the hatchling was heavy and hot. Jake pulled off his gloves and grabbed his multi-tool from his belt. He had to work fast. The fire was getting worse, and parts of the ceiling were starting to collapse. He jammed the multi-tool under the beam and used it as a lever, pushing down with all his strength. The beam lifted slightly, and the hatchling squirmed, trying to pull itself free. But it was not enough. Jake needed more leverage. He looked around frantically and spotted a piece of pipe. He grabbed it, not caring that it burned his hands, and shoved it under the beam. Come on, he grunted, pushing down on the pipe with everything he had. The beam lifted higher. The hatchling pulled itself free, its small legs scrambling on the floor. It looked up at Jake with those huge eyes, and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe, or just shared fear. An explosion rocked the hangar. The fuel tanks at the far end had caught fire. A wave of heat and force threw Jake backward. He hit the ground hard, and pain shot through his shoulder. The hatchling cried out in terror as flames rushed toward them both. Jake did not think. He just moved. He grabbed the hatchling and pulled it against his chest, wrapping his arms and body around it. The creature was hot, its scales burning through his coat and shirt, but he held on tight, shielding it with his own body. The fire engulfed them. Pain. Incredible pain. Jake felt his skin burning, felt the heat searing through him. He could not breathe, could not see, could not think. The world became nothing but fire and agony. The hatchling was crying against his chest, and Jake felt something strange, a warmth that was different from the burning flames. It spread from the points where the creature's scales touched his skin, through his chest, down his arms. It did not hurt. It felt almost like ice, cold and soothing against the fire. Then everything went dark. Jake's last thought before unconsciousness took him was that at least the little dragon might survive. He hoped someone would find it. He hoped it would be okay. Then there was nothing. When Jake opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was a white ceiling. Bright lights. The smell of antiseptic. He tried to move and immediately regretted it. His entire body felt like one giant bruise, and his skin was tight and painful. "Don't move," a woman's voice said. "You're in medical. You've been unconscious for 3 days." Jake turned his head slightly and saw Dr. Lisa Chen standing beside his bed. She was the station's chief medical officer, a small woman with sharp eyes and steady hands. 3 days? Jake's voice came out as a croak. "You should be dead," Lisa said bluntly. "The fire, the smoke, the burns. You should absolutely be dead. But you're not. And I have no idea why." Jake tried to remember what happened, but it was all fuzzy. The fire. The crying. The hatchling, he said suddenly. "Is it okay?" Lisa gave him a strange look. "The dragon princess is fine. Worried about you. Actually, though I have no idea how I know that." She shook her head. "Jake, what you did was incredibly stupid and incredibly brave. You saved the daughter of the dragon sovereign." Jake closed his eyes. He had not known who the hatchling was. He had just heard something crying in the fire and could not leave it there. "Get some rest," Lisa said. "You have visitors coming soon. Important ones. And Jake?" She paused at the door. "Look at your arms when you get a chance. Something happened to you in that fire. Something I can't explain." After she left, Jake slowly lifted his arms. Even through the bandages, he could see a faint glow beneath them. Strange marks that had not been there before, pulsing with a soft golden light. What had he gotten himself into? The marks were unlike anything Jake had ever seen. When Dr. Lisa Chen finally removed the bandages 2 days later, both of them stared at his arms in silence. The burns were healing, but where the dragon hatchling had touched him, golden patterns remained on his skin. They looked like flames frozen in time, swirling up his forearms and across his chest. "They glow sometimes," Lisa said quietly, running a medical scanner over his arm, "especially at night. And your body temperature has increased by 2 degrees. But you show no signs of fever. Your healing rate is 3 times faster than normal." She looked up at him. "Jake, this is beyond anything in my medical training." Jake touched one of the marks carefully. It felt warm under his fingers, like touching sun-heated metal. But it did not hurt. In fact, nothing hurt anymore. The burns that should have left him scarred and in pain for months were already turning into pink new skin. "What does this mean?" he asked. Lisa shook her head. "I don't know. But the dragons do. They've been waiting to speak with you." That afternoon, Station Commander Ryan Blake came to see Jake in medical. The commander was a tall man with gray hair and a permanent worried expression. Right now, he looked more worried than usual. "Martinez," he said, sitting down in the chair beside Jake's bed. "How are you feeling?" "Better than I should be," Jake answered honestly. Ryan nodded. "I need to tell you something. A Draconid diplomatic vessel arrived this morning. It's massive. Bigger than anything we've ever had dock here. They're asking for you specifically." Jake felt his stomach drop. "Me? Why?" "Because you saved someone very important." Ryan leaned forward. "That hatchling you pulled out of the fire? Her name is Ember. She's the daughter of Theraxis, the dragon sovereign, the ruler of the entire Draconid Empire." Jake's mind went blank for a moment. He had saved a princess, an actual dragon princess. "They want to meet with you as soon as possible," Ryan continued. "I've been stalling them, waiting for you to wake up and heal. But Jake, this is a big deal. A really big deal. The dragons have never cared much about individual humans before. But now they're treating you like you're some kind of hero." "I just did what anyone would do," Jake said. Ryan gave him a sad smile. "No. You did what almost no one would do. You ran into a fire when everyone else was running out. And now, apparently, there are consequences for that." 2 hours later, Jake found himself in the station's main conference room. He wore a clean uniform that felt too tight around his marked arms. Dr. Lisa Chen stood beside him, and Commander Ryan sat at the head of the table. The room was normally used for trade negotiations and supply contracts. Today, it would host something much more important. The doors opened, and a dragon entered. Jake had seen dragons before on news broadcasts and in videos, but seeing one in person was completely different. The creature was enormous, its head nearly touching the ceiling even though it walked on all 4 legs. Its scales were deep blue, almost black, and they shimmered in the light. Ancient eyes, golden and wise, fixed on Jake. "I am Ambassador Chris's Tar," the dragon said. Its voice was deep and rumbling, each word carefully pronounced. "I speak for the Dragon Sovereign and the Draconid Empire." Jake stood up straighter, trying not to show how nervous he was. "I'm Jake Martinez, just a mechanic." "You are far more than just a mechanic now," Chris Tar said. The dragon moved closer, and Jake forced himself not to step back. "You saved Princess Ember's life. You threw yourself into fire, knowing you would die, to protect a creature you did not know. Is this true?" I heard her crying," Jake said. "I couldn't just leave her there." Something shifted in Chris's Tar's expression. Something that might have been approval. "Show me your arms." Jake hesitated, then rolled up his sleeves. The golden marks glowed softly in the conference room's light. Chris's Tar leaned in close, examining them carefully. The dragon's breath was hot against Jake's skin. "It is as I suspected," Chris Tar said, pulling back. "You have been marked by the soul binding." "The what?" Ryan asked. Chris's Tar turned to face all of them. "When a human performs an act of complete selfless sacrifice for one of our kind, when they give up their own life to save ours, something rare happens. A bond forms between the human and dragon kind. We call it the soul binding. It has not occurred in over 10,000 years. Lisa stepped forward. "That explains the marks and the healing." "But what does it mean?" "It means," Chris Tar said slowly, "that Jake Martinez now carries a piece of dragon fire within him. The marks are proof of this. He can withstand extreme heat. He will heal faster than normal humans. And most importantly, he can communicate with us." "Communicate?" Jake asked. "Telepathically," Chris's Tar explained. "You can hear our thoughts, and we can hear yours. The bond connects you to all of dragonkind, but especially to Princess Ember. You saved her life, and now you are linked to her forever." Jake sat down heavily. This was too much. He had just wanted to help. He had not asked for any of this. "There is more," Chris Tar continued. "According to our ancient prophecy, a human who receives the soul binding becomes the flame bearer. a champion and protector of dragonkind. You are the first flame-bearer in 10,000 years. Jake Martinez. I don't want to be anyone's champion, Jake said. I'm not a warrior or a hero. I fix engines and repair ships. That's all I know how to do. Chris's Tar's eyes softened. The flame-bearer is not chosen for their strength in battle. They are chosen for their strength of heart. You proved that heart when you ran into the fire. Can the binding be undone? Ryan asked. No, Tar said firmly. What is bound in fire cannot be unbound. Jake Martinez will carry these marks for the rest of his life. The question now is what he will do with them. Jake looked down at his glowing arms. His normal life was over. He understood that now. Everything had changed the moment he heard that crying in the fire. What happens next? He asked quietly. The Dragon Sovereign requests your presence on our homeworld, Tar said. Draconis Prime. Princess Ember wishes to meet the one who saved her. And the Council of Elders wishes to see the flame-bearer with their own eyes. And if I say no, then you say no, Tar replied. We will not force you. But understand this. You carry dragon fire now. You are part of something larger than yourself. The marks will not fade. The connection will not weaken. You can return to your life here, but you will never be the same person you were before. Jake closed his eyes. He thought about that moment in the fire, holding the small dragon against his chest, while flames consumed them both. He thought about those terrified eyes looking up at him. He had not saved Ember because he expected a reward or recognition. He had saved her because it was the right thing to do. How long would I be gone? He asked. As long as you wish, Tar said. You are not a prisoner or a servant. You are the flame-bearer. You are honored among our people. Commander Ryan put a hand on Jake's shoulder. Whatever you decide, the station supports you. You'll always have a job here if you want to come back. Jake thought about it for a long moment. Then he looked up at Chris's Tar and nodded. I'll go, he said. I want to meet Ember. I want to understand what happened to me. Chris's Tar bowed his great head. Then it is settled. We leave in 3 days. That will give you time to prepare and say your farewells. After the ambassador left, Jake sat alone in the conference room, staring at his marked arms. 3 days ago, he had been nobody, just another mechanic on a space station, living a quiet, normal life. Now he was the flame-bearer, whatever that meant. He was bound to dragons and ancient prophecies. And somewhere on a distant world, a small dragon princess was waiting to see him again. Jake did not know what the future held. But he knew one thing for certain. His life would never be simple again. He just hoped he was strong enough for whatever came next. The diplomatic vessel was called the Starfire Ascendant. And it was the most beautiful ship Jake had ever seen. The hull was made of some kind of dark metal that seemed to absorb light, and golden patterns ran along its sides like rivers of fire. Inside, everything was built on a scale meant for dragons. The corridors were wide enough for 3 dragons to walk side by side, and the ceilings were so high that Jake felt like an insect. Commander Ryan Blake and a diplomatic officer named Kate Morrison traveled with him. Kate was a serious woman in her 40s who worked for Earth's diplomatic corps. She spent most of the journey briefing Jake on dragon culture and protocol. Don't stare directly at a dragon's eyes for too long, she explained as they sat in the human quarters. It's considered a challenge. And never touch a dragon's wings without permission. That's extremely rude, Jake nodded, trying to remember everything. His head was spinning with information. Dragon social hierarchy, proper greeting rituals, important historical events. It was overwhelming. On the 2nd day of the journey, something strange happened. Jake was alone in his quarters, looking out at the stars rushing past, when he heard a voice. It was not coming from outside. It was inside his head, young and uncertain. Hello? Jake jumped up from his seat, looking around the empty room. Who's there? It's me. Ember. 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 Jake's hand went to his chest, where the marks were hidden under his shirt. The dragon princess was talking to him. Inside his mind, Ember, he said out loud, feeling foolish talking to an empty room. You can hear me. The voice was filled with excitement. Kristar said you would be able to, but I wasn't sure. Can you talk back? Jake sat down slowly. He did not know how this worked. He tried thinking words instead of saying them. Like this? Like this? Yes. Oh, this is wonderful. Ember's mental voice was like music, happy and bright. I wanted to thank you for saving me. Father said I shouldn't bother you, but I had to talk to you. You're not bothering me. Jake thought back. It was strange, communicating this way, but somehow natural. How are you feeling? Are your injuries healed? All better. The healers said I was lucky. If you hadn't come, the fire would have killed me. There was a pause. Why did you do it? You didn't know who I was. You could have died. Jake thought about how to explain it. I heard you crying. I couldn't leave you there, no matter who you were. That's what makes you special, Ember said softly. That's why the Marks chose you. They talked for hours that day. Ember told him about growing up on Draconis Prime, about flying lessons and learning to breathe fire properly. Jake told her about growing up on Earth, about learning to fix machines from his grandfather. The connection between them grew stronger with each conversation. On the 5th day, they arrived at Draconis Prime. Jake stood at the observation window with Ryan and Kate, staring at the planet below. It was like nothing he had ever imagined. The world was covered in mountains that seemed to float in the air, held up by some force he could not understand. Rivers of lava flowed through valleys, and massive cities were carved into volcanic peaks. Dragons filled the sky. Hundreds of them, their scales glittering in the sunlight. It's beautiful, Kate whispered. It's terrifying, Ryan muttered. Jake said nothing. He was too busy trying to process what he was seeing. They landed in a city called the Grand Crucible, built inside and around an enormous volcano. As they stepped off the ship onto a platform made of black stone, Jake felt the heat rising from below. It would have been uncomfortable for most humans, but to him, it felt almost pleasant. The marks on his arms glowed brighter in response. Dragons were everywhere. They perched on ledges, flew overhead, walked through streets, built for their massive size. Every one of them turned to stare as Jake and the other humans passed. Jake heard whispers in his mind, dozens of dragon voices talking about him. The Flamebearer. A human? He doesn't look like much. The marks are real. I can see them glowing. Jake tried to ignore the attention and focused on following Ambassador Chris's tar deeper into the city. They walked through corridors carved from solid rock, past chambers filled with treasures and ancient artifacts. Finally, they reached a massive hall with a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadows. At the far end of the hall, on a throne made of crystal and gold, sat the largest dragon Jake had ever seen. Dragon Sovereign Theraxis was ancient. His scales were deep crimson, darker than blood, and they were covered in scars from countless battles. His eyes were like molten gold, burning with intelligence and power. When he looked at Jake, the human felt like he was being examined down to his soul. "Approach," Theraxis said. His voice was thunder, shaking the very stones of the hall. Jake walked forward on shaking legs. Kate and Ryan stayed behind with the other humans. This was something he had to do alone. Next to Theraxis, on a smaller throne, sat Ember. She was still small, no larger than a pony, with bright red scales that shone in the light. When she saw Jake, her eyes lit up with joy. "Father, this is him," she said excitedly. "This is Jake." Theraxis held up one enormous claw, and Ember fell silent. The Dragon Sovereign studied Jake for a long moment. "You saved my daughter's life," Theraxis finally said. "For that, you have my gratitude. But gratitude alone does not explain the marks you bear." Jake found his voice. "I didn't ask for them, Your Majesty." "No, you did not," Theraxis agreed. "The soul binding is not given lightly. It requires a sacrifice so pure, so selfless, that it touches the very heart of dragon magic. You ran into fire knowing you would die. You gave your life for one of our young. That is why you stand here now as the flame bearer. I don't know how to be what you want me to be, Jake admitted. I'm not a warrior. I'm not special. And yet you did something even our greatest warriors would hesitate to do, a new voice said. Jake turned and saw another dragon enter the hall. This one was covered in dark gray scales and wore armor made of some black metal. His eyes were cold, calculating. This is General Scorch, Chrysostar said quietly. Commander of our military forces. The flame bearer, Scorch said, his voice filled with contempt. The human who supposedly fulfills an ancient prophecy. Forgive me, Sovereign, but I see only a weak creature who got lucky. Scorch, Thraxus warned. No, Father, let me speak. Scorch continued, moving closer to Jake. For 10,000 years we have been told a human would come, marked by fire, to stand as our champion. And this is what we get? A mechanic? Someone who fixes broken machines? Jake stood his ground, even though his heart was racing. I didn't ask for this. That much is clear, Scorch sneered. You have no training, no combat experience, no understanding of our ways. The marks may glow on your skin, but that does not make you worthy. Thraxus rose from his throne, and the entire hall seemed to shake. Enough, Scorch. I will not have you insult our honored guest. Then test him, Scorch said, turning to face the Sovereign. If he truly is the flame-bearer, let him prove it. Let him undergo the 3 trials of fire, as every flame-bearer in history has done. The hall went silent. Every dragon in the room was watching now. Jake looked at Ember, who seemed worried. The trials have not been performed in 10,000 years, Thraxus said slowly. Then it is time to perform them again, Scorch insisted. If this human passes, I will accept him as the flame-bearer. But if he fails, then the prophecy is false, and we can stop pretending that humans are anything more than what they are. Thraxus looked down at Jake. The choice is yours, Jake Martinez. The 3 trials of fire will test your courage, your wisdom, and your heart. They are not meant to be easy. Many have failed them in the past. You can refuse, and no one will think less of you. Jake thought about Ember, about the marks on his arms, about the crying he had heard in the fire. He had come this far. He could not turn back now. I'll do it, he said, his voice steady despite his fear. I'll take the trials. Ember made a small sound of distress. Thraxus nodded slowly. So be it. The dragon sovereign declared. In 3 days, Jake Martinez will face the 3 trials of fire. If he succeeds, he will be recognized as the true flame-bearer. If he fails, the marks will fade, and he will return to his people with our thanks for saving Princess Ember. And my respect, Scorch added, though his tone said he expected Jake to fail. As the meeting ended and Jake was led away to guest quarters, Ember's voice filled his mind. Jake, you don't have to do this. The trials are dangerous. I know, he thought back. But I have to try. I have to know if I'm really meant to be here. You are, Ember said with certainty. I know you are. The fire chose you for a reason. Jake hoped she was right, because in 3 days, he would face challenges that would test everything he was, and failure meant losing the connection to dragons, losing the marks, losing Ember's voice in his mind. He had 3 days to prepare for something he did not understand. 3 days before everything would change again. The first trial began at dawn on the 3rd day. Jake stood at the entrance to the burning labyrinth, a network of caves deep beneath the grand crucible. Hundreds of dragons watched from viewing platforms carved into the walls. Kate and Ryan were there too, looking worried. Ember sat beside her father, her eyes fixed on Jake. The trial of courage tests whether you can face your fears, Thraxus announced. You must enter the labyrinth and retrieve the sacred crystal from its heart. The path is filled with living flames that will test your resolve. You may turn back at any time, but if you do, you fail. Jake looked into the dark entrance. Heat poured out of it like breath from a furnace. He touched the marks on his arms, feeling their warmth, and stepped forward. The labyrinth was a nightmare. The walls were made of black stone that glowed red with heat. Flames danced across the floor and ceiling, moving like living creatures. They reached for Jake as he passed, licking at his skin. The marks protected him from being burned, but the fear was real. The tunnels twisted and turned, leading him deeper into the earth. There were dozens of paths, and Jake had no idea which one was correct. He tried to think like he did when fixing machines. Every machine had a logic to it, a pattern. Maybe the labyrinth did too. He started paying attention to small details. The way the flames moved, the temperature changes, the slight slope of the floor. Slowly, carefully, he found his way forward. Then the fear came. It was not natural fear. This was something else, something that reached into his mind and pulled out his worst nightmares. Jake saw himself back in the burning hangar, but this time he was too late. He watched Ember die in the flames while he stood frozen, unable to move. He saw his friends and family consumed by fire, while he did nothing to help. His legs stopped working. He fell to his knees, gasping for air. Not real, he whispered to himself. It's not real, but it felt real. The fear was crushing him, making it hard to breathe. He wanted to turn back, to run, to escape this terrible place. Then he heard Ember's voice in his mind. You can do this, Jake. Remember why you're here. He remembered. He had not run into that burning hangar because he was brave. He had been terrified. But he had gone anyway because something needed help. Courage was not the absence of fear. It was doing what needed to be done despite the fear. Jake forced himself to stand. He pushed forward through the visions, through the fear, until he reached the heart of the labyrinth. There, floating in the center of a chamber filled with white-hot flames, was a crystal that glowed like a captured star. He walked through the fire, grabbed the crystal, and made his way back out. When he emerged from the labyrinth, covered in soot but holding the crystal high, the watching dragons erupted in approval. Even Scorch looked surprised. The second trial came the next day. Jake was brought before the Council of Elders, 5 ancient dragons who had lived for thousands of years. They sat in a circle around him, their eyes glowing with wisdom and power. The trial of wisdom tests your judgment and understanding, the eldest dragon said. We will present you with scenarios. You must tell us what you would do. They gave him impossible choices. A ship was sinking with both human and dragon passengers. But he could only save one group. A war was starting between 2 species, and he had information that could end it, but revealing it would betray a friend's trust. A child had broken an important law to save another child's life, and he had to decide the punishment. Jake quickly realized this was not about finding the right answer. There were no right answers to these questions. It was about how he thought through them. For each scenario, he admitted when he did not know what to do. He explained his reasoning, showed both sides of the argument, and asked questions instead of making grand declarations. Where other candidates might have tried to look wise and certain, Jake showed honesty and doubt. This one thinks differently, one elder said to the others. He does not pretend to have all the answers. Perhaps that is the point, another replied. True wisdom is knowing what you do not know. When they finished, the eldest dragon nodded. You have passed the trial of wisdom, not through certainty, but through humility. The third trial was the hardest. Jake was led to a small chamber with 2 stone pedestals. On each pedestal sat a glowing sphere. The trial of sacrifice, Thraxis explained. One sphere will grant you great power. Your connection to dragons will be strengthened 10-fold. You will be able to transform your body, to breathe fire, to fly. You will become more than human. The other sphere will transfer all of your abilities to save a dragon egg whose mother died in battle. The egg is dying, and only the power of the flame bearer can save it. Choose. Jake looked at the 2 spheres. One offered him everything. Power, status, abilities beyond imagining. The other offered nothing but the knowledge that a life would be saved. He did not hesitate. He reached for the sphere that would save the egg. The moment his hand touched it, brilliant light filled the chamber. The marks on his body blazed brighter than ever before, and Jake felt the power flowing out of him. It should have hurt, but it felt right. It felt like the moment he had grabbed Ember in the fire, giving everything to protect her. When the light faded, Theraxis was smiling. "There was no dying egg," the dragon sovereign said gently. "It was an illusion, a test. The true trial of sacrifice was whether you would give up your gift for another life. You chose to sacrifice without hesitation. You have proven yourself worthy." Jake looked down at his arms. The marks were still there, brighter than before. He had not lost anything. He had gained something. Respect. But not everyone was satisfied. "Trials mean nothing," General Scorch said, stepping forward. "They test character, not strength. The Flamebearer must also be able to protect dragonkind. I challenge you, human, to ritual combat. Prove you have the strength to be our champion." The watching crowd went silent. Ember stood up, distressed. "Father, no. This wasn't part of the agreement. It is within his rights," Theraxis said heavily. "But Jake Martinez, you do not have to accept. You have passed the 3 trials. You have proven yourself." Jake looked at Scorch. The general's eyes were filled with challenge and contempt. If Jake refused now, there would always be doubt. Always be dragons who questioned him. "I accept," Jake said. "Jake, no!" Ember's voice filled his mind. "Scorch is one of our best warriors. He has centuries of experience. You can't win." "Maybe not," Jake thought back. "But I have to try." The combat arena was a vast circular platform suspended over a lake of lava. Thousands of dragons gathered to watch. Kate and Ryan looked terrified. Ember was crying. Though dragons did not cry water, she made small sounds of distress that broke Jake's heart. Scorch stood at one end of the arena, massive and armored. Jake stood at the other, small and human. He had been given light armor, but it felt useless against a creature that could breathe fire and fly. "The combat ends when one yields or cannot continue," Theraxis announced. "It is to unconsciousness, or surrender only. Killing is forbidden. Begin," an elder declared. Scorch immediately launched himself into the air, his wings spreading wide. He circled above Jake like a predator, then dove, breathing a stream of white-hot fire. Jake rolled to the side, feeling the heat wash over him. The marks protected him from the worst of it, but the force of the attack nearly knocked him off his feet. He ran for cover behind a stone pillar. "You cannot hide forever, human," Scorch roared. Jake's mind raced. He could not match Scorch's strength or speed. He could not fly, could not breathe fire, could not fight like a dragon. But he was not trying to fight like a dragon. He was human, and humans won fights differently. He studied Scorch's attack patterns. The general was powerful, but predictable. He always circled right before diving. He always breathed fire from the same angle. He used raw power instead of strategy. Jake waited for the next dive, then moved at the last second. Instead of running away, he ran towards Scorch, sliding under the dragon's belly. He grabbed onto the armor plates and held on tight. Scorch roared in surprise and tried to shake him off. But Jake had spent years climbing around starships, working in tight spaces, using his hands and body weight to solve problems. He knew how to hold on. He climbed up Scorch's back, toward the wings. Dragon's wings were sensitive, Kate had told him. Never touch them without permission. Jake grabbed the edge of Scorch's right wing and pulled hard. The dragon screamed and crashed to the ground. Jake rolled away, breathing hard. Scorch got up, fury in his eyes. "Clever," the general snarled. But cleverness is not enough. They fought for what felt like hours. Jake used every trick he could think of. He used the environment, the pillars, even pieces of Scorch's own armor that had broken off. He could not win through strength, so he won through endurance and strategy. Finally, Jake saw his opening. Scorch was getting tired, his movements slower. The dragon charged one more time, head down, trying to ram him. Jake waited until the last possible second, then dropped flat to the ground. Scorch could not stop in time. The general's momentum carried him over the edge of the platform. Jake lunged forward and grabbed Scorch's tail, holding on with all his remaining strength. The dragon dangled over the lava, held only by Jake's grip. "I can pull you up," Jake said through gritted teeth. "Or I can let go. Your choice." Scorch looked up at him, surprise in his ancient eyes. "Why would you save me?" "I tried to humiliate you. Because that's what the Flamebearer does," Jake said. "He protects dragons. All dragons." For a long moment, Scorch just stared at him. Then the general began to laugh. A deep rumbling sound. "Pull me up, human. You have made your point." Jake pulled with everything he had, dragging the massive dragon back onto the platform. They both collapsed, exhausted. The crowd was silent, watching. Scorch slowly got to his feet and looked down at Jake. Then he bowed his head. "I yield," the general said. "You are the Flamebearer. I was wrong to doubt you." The arena erupted in approval. Dragons roared and beat their wings, creating a sound like thunder. Jake lay on the ground, too tired to move, and smiled. The ceremony took place in the grand hall, under a sky filled with stars. Jake stood before Dragon's sovereign Thraxis, cleaned up but still covered in bruises from the fight with Scorch. Every important dragon in the Empire was present, along with Kate, Ryan, and a delegation of humans who had arrived that morning. "Jake Martinez," Thraxis began, his voice carrying through the vast chamber. "You have passed the 3 trials of fire. You have shown courage in the face of fear, wisdom in the face of impossible choices, and the willingness to sacrifice for others. You have earned the respect of even those who doubted you." He glanced at General Scorch, who stood nearby, and nodded in agreement. "More than this, you have shown us what it truly means to be the Flamebearer. Not through strength of arms, but through strength of character. Today, before all assembled here, I formally recognize you as the Flamebearer and chosen one of dragonkind." The marks on Jake's arms blazed with golden light. He felt warmth spread through his entire body, not painful, but powerful. The connection to dragons that he had felt since the fire grew stronger, like 1,000 voices singing in harmony in the back of his mind. Ember rushed forward and pressed her head against Jake's chest, making happy sounds. He stroked her scales gently, feeling the bond between them strengthen even further. "But there is more you must know," Thraxis continued, his tone growing serious. "We did not summon you here only for tradition and ceremony. The Flamebearer appears in times of great need. And we are facing such a time now." The hall grew quiet. Jake looked up at the Dragon Sovereign, waiting. "There is an enemy," Thraxis said slowly. "Ancient and terrible. We call them the Void Collective. They are not living beings as we understand them, but something else, something that feeds on energy, on life, on light itself. They have destroyed civilizations before. Thousands of years ago, they came to this part of the galaxy, and it took the combined strength of many species to drive them back." Chris's Tar stepped forward. "They are returning. We have detected their ships at the edges of our space. They have already attacked 3 colony worlds, harvesting everything and leaving nothing but dead rocks behind." Jake felt cold despite the warmth of the marks. "What do they want?" "Dragonfire," Thraxis answered. "Our life force. Our energy. To them, we are fuel for their endless hunger. And they will not stop with us. They will consume every world, every species they can reach, including yours." Kate spoke up from the human delegation. "Why haven't we heard about this threat? Earth's military would want to know." "Because we dragons are proud," Scorch said, his voice heavy with regret. "We believed we could handle this threat alone. We did not want to appear weak by asking for help. But the Flamebearer's appearance has made us reconsider. The prophecy says he will unite species against a common enemy. We believe that enemy is the Void Collective." Quote, Jake's mind was racing. This was bigger than he had imagined. Not just about him and dragons, but about survival. About protecting both his species and his new dragon friends from something that wanted to destroy them all. "What can I do?" he asked, I'm just one person. You are more than one person, Thraxis said gently. You are the bridge between our people. Humans and dragons have been distant allies for decades, cooperating on trade and diplomacy, but never truly united. You can change that. Your existence proves that our species can bond, can trust each other, can fight together. The Void Collective is coming, Kristar added. In perhaps 6 months, maybe less. They will reach our core worlds. We need to prepare. We need allies. We need humans and dragons fighting side by side. Jake looked at Kate and Ryan. Kate nodded slowly. I'll send a message to Earth immediately. If what you're saying is true, we need to mobilize every ship we have. It won't be easy, Ryan warned. A lot of humans don't trust aliens. Even ones we trade with. They'll need convincing. Then we will convince them, Jake said, surprised by the strength in his own voice. We'll show them that we can work together. That we're stronger united than divided. Ember's voice filled his mind. You really are the flame bearer. Not because of the marks or the trials, but because you believe we can be better together. Over the next few hours, plans were made. Earth would send its diplomatic fleet to Draconis Prime for official talks. The dragons would share intelligence about the Void Collective. Joint training exercises would begin between human and dragon forces. It was the beginning of a real alliance. 3 days later, Jake stood on a landing platform, watching ships arrive. The Earth diplomatic fleet was smaller than the dragon vessels, but impressive in its own way. Sleek warships and transport carriers, all bearing the symbols of humanity. And on one of the shuttles was someone Jake had not expected to see. Jake, a young woman's voice called out. He turned and saw his sister Amy running toward him. She was 28. A shuttle pilot with short dark hair and a bright smile. When she reached him, she threw her arms around him in a tight hug. You idiot, she said, half laughing and half crying. You scared me to death. I heard you ran into a fire and nearly died, and then suddenly you're some kind of dragon prophet, and nobody would tell me anything. I'm okay, Jake said, hugging her back. I'm sorry I worried you. Amy pulled back and looked at his arms, at the glowing marks. Are those real? Can I touch them? They're real. And yes, she touched one of the marks carefully, and her eyes widened. They're warm. Jake, what happened to you? He told her the whole story while they walked through the city. About the fire, about Ember, about the trials and the fight with Scorch, about the Void Collective and the coming war. Amy listened to it all with wide eyes. So you're a hero now, she said when he finished. I'm not a hero, Jake insisted. I just did what needed doing. That's what heroes are. Amy said, punching his shoulder lightly. People who do what needs doing when everyone else is running away. Win 4. Also 4. Win 4-4. Win 4-4. Win 4-4-4. Also 4. Also 4. Also 4. That evening, there was a gathering in the main plaza. Dragons and humans mixed together. Something that had never happened before on this scale. Jake stood on a raised platform with Thraxis on one side and Kate on the other. Thousands watched, both dragon and human. We stand at a crossroads, Jake began, his voice amplified to reach everyone. In a few months, an enemy will come. An enemy that doesn't care if we're human or dragon. To them, we're all just fuel to be consumed. He looked out at the crowd. I'm not a warrior. I'm not a politician. I'm just a mechanic who heard someone crying in a fire and couldn't walk away. But that moment changed everything. It showed me that we're not as different as we think. Dragons and humans, we both protect our young. We both value courage and sacrifice. We both want to survive and thrive. Ember flew up and landed beside him, her scales glowing in the evening light. This is my friend, she said, her young voice clear and strong. He saved my life when he had no reason to. He gave up everything to protect someone he didn't know. That's what we need now. That's how we'll survive. Together, Jake continued. We can face anything. Apart, we'll fall. The Void Collective is counting on us being divided, being afraid of each other. Let's prove them wrong. He raised his arms, and the marks blazed with golden fire. Dragons roared their approval. Humans cheered. And in that moment, something shifted. A real alliance was born, forged not in trade agreements or political treaties, but in shared purpose and mutual respect. General Scorch flew down and landed beside the platform. The Flamebearer speaks truth. I will fight beside humans. I will teach them our ways and learn theirs. We will face this enemy as one people, not two. The celebration lasted into the night. Dragons and humans talked, shared stories, began to build the relationships that would be crucial in the coming fight. Jake watched it all, still hardly believing this was his life now. Amy found him later, sitting on a quiet balcony overlooking the city. She sat down beside him. "You okay?" she asked. "I don't know," Jake admitted. "A week ago, I was just fixing engines. Now I'm supposed to unite two species and help fight something that eats life itself. It's a lot. You'll figure it out," Amy said confidently. "You always do. Remember when you fixed Dad's car when you were 12? And everyone said it was impossible? You figured it out. This is just a bigger engine." Jake laughed despite himself. "That's one way to look at it." Ember joined them, landing gracefully on the balcony. She was getting bigger already, growing fast. "Are you worried?" she asked. "Terrified," Jake said honestly. "Good," Ember replied. "Fear keeps us smart. It's what you do with the fear that matters." Jake looked out at the plaza below, at humans and dragons working together, building something new. He thought about the Void Collective coming, about the battles ahead. He thought about how one moment of choice had brought him here. He had run into fire to save a life, and that single act had changed everything. Now, he would stand with dragons against a threat that could destroy them all. He was not a warrior or a prophet. He was just Jake Martinez, a mechanic who believed that doing the right thing mattered. But maybe that was enough. Maybe that was exactly what the galaxy needed. "Whatever comes," he said quietly, "we'll face it together." The marks on his arms glowed softly in agreement. In the distance, more human ships were arriving, and dragon patrols flew overhead. Two species, once distant, now united by fire and shared purpose. The Flamebearer's journey was just beginning. But for the first time since he woke up in that medical bay, Jake felt ready for whatever came next. He was not alone. He had Ember, he had Amy, he had friends on both sides. And together, they would show the Void Collective what happened when you threatened those the Flamebearer had sworn to protect. The war was coming. But so was hope. And sometimes, hope was the strongest weapon of all.